happy to see a lovely audience after COVID. I think this seems to be a huge jamboree of good sorts. So today's topic, we said there's no slides. It's just a fireside chat, and we want to make it also interactive, unlike just speaking. We've been working with a lot of successful HR heads, HR managers, and various professionals. One of the thoughts which came was, is the role changing? The role of an HR moved from we had this famous call HR business partners. I remember 5 years back, people used to say, I'm a HR BP. And we've seen that the role has moved from a HR BP to a business enabler. And now, post-COVID, and we are seeing a trend, I don't know how much you have seen, a lot of HR roles have become a business drivers. Drivers in the sense, HR people are now talking of EBITDA margins, they're talking of top line, they're talking of ESG, so almost like they're talking like a board member. And we have met a lot of board members and CEOs, so they say, yes, I think role we are looking at HR is very different, which is good news for all of us. So no longer are we seeing HR as a processing team. And if you see history, most of the successful HR heads are the people who talk business. So when we designed this fireside chat, we thought let us get Samir, who is a board member at the Fortune Hotels and the ITC thing. He's on the board there. And he's been closely working with all of these HR heads. And we want to hear from a board member, how do they see HR roles changing? So do you all agree that COVID has changed life for all of us? Yeah? And do you think it has changed for HR a lot? A lot of pressure? Yeah? Lives have changed. All of a sudden, you're moved from monitoring to mentoring. All of a sudden, individual performance didn't matter. It moved to team performance. All of a sudden, team performance also doesn't matter. It is organizational performance. All of a sudden, the central authority you had those controls and levels vanished. I think I've seen a lot of managers, CEOs saying things have changed. All of a sudden, the purpose of doing an operations has changed. So we run something called purpose versus means, and I think COVID has really helped us to framework saying that what we're doing, is it a purpose or a means? For example, I'll give an example of performance management. So we have those KRA forms. All of a sudden, CHRO said, boss, I'm not interested in KRA forms because that's a means. The purpose is to ensure performance. Payroll processing is a means, not a purpose. So we eliminate payroll processing. The role of HR, I think, is a very, if you ask me, one good thing apart from all the negative things in pandemic is to role of HR to really throw in the limelight and say, hey, HR head, why don't you help improve the business? With that, I will just want to discussion with Samir. Like the introduction said, Samir runs 76 properties. He has worked in Southeast Asia extensively. And had an interesting chat with you, Samir. And then Samir, you were saying, you don't see a difference between HR and a business manager. And if you know the manning in hospitality industry, manning determines the profitability of business. And you're talking of a case where you actually brought in the HR team there. Would you mind narrating that experience there, Samir?
Thanks, Prasad. Firstly, good morning, everybody, and indeed a privilege to be here. Definitely quite an interesting gathering I see here. So coming back to the topic, absolutely. I think there is a huge role for HR leaders to be playing in businesses. And if I link back some of the stories or some of the examples to what we do, for sure, the pandemic has actually, in my mind, magnified the role of HR in what we do. Probably a lot more for us as a business than some of the other businesses or some of the other industries, because we are very people-centric still as an industry. And I don't think that will change for a long, long time to come, irrespective of how much automation and how much technology comes in, because hospitality will continue to be people-centric, supported by a whole lot of technology, which we can already start seeing. So when I talk about, or when we were having this conversation just a short while back about what's changed for HR, I think what's really changed for HR is that till the pandemic, it was always sort of seen as a support function, but now you are right in the midst of action, because the biggest challenge today is the fight for talent. So I think Gone are the days when the biggest challenge for businesses was trying to capture business, especially in the hotel industry. We do seem to be seeing some good upside in business, but I think the bigger challenge we have is for talent. So definitely a huge importance for the role of the HR leader, just because talent continues to be the biggest asset we will nurture over a period of time.
I think that's just it, Samir. I think, comes from a board member. This comes from a CEO. Which is like, I think, good news is you are now telling HR managers we are looking up you on thing. So when you did this change, what did you see from the HR manager? Did you get a resistance of understanding numbers? You're all of a sudden asking profitability from the HR managers. So how did they respond?
So I'll just give one example of how we sort of started talking about this. Actually, it started pre-pandemic. So pre-pandemic, we actually had a new HR head and who was from a different industry. So it was started off by saying, probably a good idea for you to understand how operations works, given that corporate tends to be slightly different from what we do on the ground in hotels, which is something like this. So would be good for you to understand how we work on, say, the biggest cost driver, if I may say, without calling it a cost, but that's also the biggest value driver, which is our people costs. So how do we work on, manning guides, etc. So we started working on getting the HR head to understand how it sort of works in our industry. It actually helped because when we got into the pandemic, the biggest issue was how do you manage your payroll costs? How do you manage when business for quite a few months was non-existent? And then as we started coming back out of the woods, how do we relook at our numbers? How do we continue being profitable as individual hotel units so that there is survival? So as we started looking at it, the advantage was that when we had to relook at how we brought in manning and how we looked at staffing our hotels, we realized that we didn't have to depend only on the operations team, because also when I own that function, which is say operations, I tend to be more defensive about it and I tend to be more resistant to change. So actually the HR function became the enabler of change in terms of understanding how some of this can be done. So it was, of course, a very crucial element for most of us as hoteliers. It's just not just limited to our company. I think many of us in the industry have gone through this part of changing our approach to manning, not looking at the traditional models, and that's where it was very helpful.
Great, thanks. I think it was quite interesting. How many of you feel that the role of HR has changed post-pandemic, more towards business, not just change? How many of you feel that you are empowered to talk of numbers and EBITDA margins and all? Many of you. Very interesting. And that is a real game changer for us as HR professionals. I always say HR has always learned technology, learn a little bit of finance and you're there. Okay? That brings to the next question, Samir. Do you think HR leaders can aspire to be CEOs?
I would say, why not? I don't think any business actually says HR shouldn't become CEOs. Maybe there has been a background to why we've not seen so many HR leaders. I would say actually if you look at it from at least our industry, and our industry traditionally has not had many HR heads as CEOs, but I think the opportunity is there all the more now because we are in the people business, and the most important resource or asset for us is people. So what we have realized is that it's become more challenging to deal with this one resource. So if you are a group of people who have expertise in this, and you are the ones who are actually coaching the other business leaders how to deal with people, you bring in all the sensitization, you bring in all those talent development programs, why not take the opportunity to become business leaders yourself? Exactly like Prasad said, I think there are some parts of it which you would probably need to look at slightly differently. It's I would say, how much are you involved in some of the other areas of the business? So pre-pandemic, I would think everybody had the biggest challenge of driving business results from a top-line revenue perspective, but today it's more about getting the right talent to deliver to guest expectations. And I think that's why it's extremely important. So would it be possible? Absolutely, yes. There is a lot more work to be done.
Can we ask this audience, I think Samir feels HR heads can become CEOs. How many of you feel that HR heads, I'm not saying wanting to become CEO, sincerely believe that they can run the company? How many people feel that? 10, 15%, good. And how many people feel that you should be becoming a CEO? How many of you wish that you are a CEO of a company? Right? Good. I think.
So I'll just add a couple of points before you go
yeah,
on.
please.
So I think when we look at our roles, and I've been in this role now for just under 5 years, I think what I bring to the role, and I would guess most of the CEOs, is not much different because we're all pretty generic in the mold. I think what we bring is the ability to sort of put in a vision for the company, B, to look at how do you put the right people into the right roles, and C, to look at how do you collaborate or how do you drive collaboration amongst the functions. You're not necessarily, as the CEO, the expert in most functions. In fact, you can be an expert in none and still get away with it as long as you are able to do the top 3 things which I just mentioned. So when you think about it, even as HR business leaders, you're already driving collaboration, you're already looking at talent, you're looking at putting the right people in the right places. So probably A, it's about saying how do you envision what's the future of the company. B, it's about saying how do you try and put in monitoring mechanisms or support mechanisms. So I think that's a couple of areas which I would add on to.
No, I think it's increasing. I'll just give an example of a large customer, mid-sized customer. We got a call for the HR said, my company is 500 crores. 2 years we want to become 950 crores. And then board has asked me that we are at a EBITDA of 7.5. How do I go to 9%? I said, wow, what a fantastic customer asking, as an HR person, can I drive this? And I was so surprised. I thought he's just asking because board has pushed. We met with the HR head, and he had read the entire balance sheet for the last 3 years, not only of his balance sheets, but of competition balance sheets, and say, what is the difference? So I think I'm seeing off. I'm not just one company. We work under a company, Tata Motors, who have engaged us for the dealers. The HR head has list down of saying how we are going to improve the margins. They came back and say, even if we have dealers have people with 10,000 rupees salary, if I lose 1%, it is 1.4 lakh rupees of cost. I said, how? Even we knew it was hard. They had saying, even if it's a 10,000 rupees per person, if somebody leaves, it is 1.4 lakh rupees of cost of acquisition, training, engagement, and all. So what I'm trying to say is more and more, and that's also a invitation for all the people in this room that pick up finance. And I think you'll be soon walking to your boardroom to have discussion with the people. Wouldn't it be interesting where you as an HR head saying, these are the initiatives I'm going to do, and this is how we can improve the top line, or bottom line, or taking something on the ESG part. Would it be interesting? Yeah. And I think that is opportunity for us as HR professionals, and there is where you use a lot of technology. And like our suggestion has been, don't use technology just because you want to do something. Use technology because you want to improve some of the business matrices in there. Do you have any questions for, oh, sorry, something you were saying.
So Prasad, I just wanted to add to that, given that you're trying to sort of take this to how do you get to that stage. I think there are 2 other elements which I would add to. One is typically, and I've seen that not just with HR, but also with many other functions, we get caught into a lot of time spent on transactional activities. So I think we will have to start exploring how do you eliminate some of the transactional activities. Of course, when I look at it from an HR or a finance perspective, a lot of the transactional activities are of compliance in nature. So hence it's required. But thanks to technology today, you can actually reduce the time spent or the effort spent, a combination of both, on those activities which can help you start, A, exploring what are the opportunities for yourself, and B, saying how do you value add to the business in general. That's the first one. The second one is, and I must apologize for generalizing, but I have seen a lot of colleagues I have worked with in HR tending to be uncomfortable with data and numbers and presenting them in sort of, a way you can influence business decisions. So for sure, another area I would recommend highly is, get comfortable with data, get comfortable with presenting it into visuals, which works well and helps you present your case. So I think just adding on a couple
Fantastic.
of pointers.
I think, like I said, it's coming from a board member saying we need HR people to know analytics, not know the analytics as a description, but you are saying help you take calls, right? interesting. I think one more point, I think some of you touched about transaction. Maybe you were slightly polite in saying, but are we saying that we, post-COVID, you feel a lot of things are non-value added?
They might seem non-value added, but you need to do it in the interest of business / compliances, and that's why I always want to not say remove it off.
No, we can trust. I think this group is not trying to be. I think we're trying to say, COVID has made a lot of things which was rational, irrational now, right? What we thought has to come, meet, we think it's not required. So a lot of things which was value added seemed value added, not value added, because there are options there. So do you think that the HR team, while you suggested they should look at finance and analytics, technology they should adopt?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we definitely need to bring in technology into every part of the business. So why not HR, for sure, and would do that. Yes.
I got 2 minutes remaining. Any questions for Samir? Yeah, please.
Hi, my name is Kunal and my question to you is, what is your experience been in terms of teaching business to HR folks? How do you, I mean, we know, I mean, we spoke about it for 2 minutes that HR needs to do business and some of us can be CEOs as well. But from the entry point, how do you teach our HR team members be more comfortable with business and work with them? What is your experience in the same?
So I think if I try to simplify the answer, because we can chat for a much longer time, but I'm conscious, and I think there's one more question in the back. So I would say, when I say business, what is it we are looking at? Let's break it into 2 parts. One is actual business delivery of, say, revenues. So that's something definitely the HR folks will have to spend time with their counterparts driving commercial activities. The second is, majority of the activities we do from a leadership perspective is either new initiatives, transformation, culture, driving your purpose. I think who better than the HR leader in the business to understand that part. So, you realistically look at it, you are coming to a very small part which is saying, how do I get comfort in, say, building customer contact? How do I get comfort with saying, trying to understand how do I gain market share? Which of course you should. Yeah, and I think there's a question at the back. I hope I've answered this.
The last
just
one,
conscious of the time.
Only 30 seconds, yeah.
I think there's somebody at the back.
Just time for the last one.
Good afternoon, I'm Bhavna. I have a little bit of a devil's advocate question, which is, I think we have enough examples of CHROs who are becoming CEOs. When do you think business heads will develop the confidence to become CHROs?
It's a brilliant question.
Can I just try to,
Yeah,
can I just?
sure.
I think it's a big mistake. We are seeing HR as a department. My personal views, HR is a trait in each manager. It cannot be a department. As I'm sure today, if you know in IT, 60% of the buying decisions are made by non-IT. So I think we as professionals, if we can make HR as a trait rather than a department as a controlling thing, it might happen.
And just to add to that, I would say that in my role, I'm actually doing an HR function, because I think 75% of my time I'm only spending with people trying to say how do I get the best out of them. So I might not have a title, and probably during my career I did have a short stint in HR, which was more for me to sort of learn. But I would say that's what we're doing all the time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Samir.
Thank you.
I
Thank
think
you.
we can talk to Samir maybe offline. Thanks a lot, Samir. This is really a pleasure.